There we go. Hello, everybody. I hope everyone's having a good evening. I am Lula Rocco from the Camarilla Cafe. Welcome. And I'm here with our co-host, Chris Bonica. Chris, how you doing tonight?
Good, brother. How are you?
Not too bad, not too bad. If we are live, I just want to reiterate to everybody, we're testing out a complete new setup. This is part of the reason we've been on a hiatus for quite a while. I went through a move, so I'm obviously in a different studio. I mean, you didn't see much of the room the last time, but now you're seeing a lot more of what's behind me, this really weird lime green. But it is a new studio. And yeah, we've just been up to a lot of stuff. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood that the show didn't end. Me and Chris did not break up. We are here. And in fact, we've been speaking quite often on a regular basis. And we've been trying to come up with a few different things to do on the show going forward. And we told a lot of people we were coming back this week. And this is going to be my first run in this new setup. So if shit hits the fan, then we'll be right back. You'll get about 20 more minutes of that beautiful music. And if not, hopefully we'll have a smooth show. How are you doing over there, Chris?
I'm doing great, brother. Absolutely great. It's a little cold here, but, whatever. It's good. It's good times.
Okay. So I guess that's a good segue to say, so I live in the state of Tennessee. Chris lives in the beautiful state of New York City. Is that no, that isn't even a fucking, whatever. He lives in the beautiful state of New York, in the area of what is known in the boroughs as New York City. So you recently came here on a vacation. We spent about a week together hanging out. And what'd you think of Tennessee?
Tennessee was awesome. It was a beautiful place. A lot of things to do. Yeah, you could go down to the strip and get totally mangled and get hit on by what you call swamp. What was it? Swamp monsters?
Swamp donkeys.
Swamp donkeys. Sorry. And no, it's a great place. There's a lot to do. It's a lot of fun.
Okay.
And it's kind of like a free country out there.
Yes. Kind of like one. Like you wouldn't think, if you lived in the major cities and you never left, you wouldn't think that part of the U.S. is functioning as though nothing's wrong, and the rest of it functioning as though we're in a state of emergency.
Right. New York is kind of like, the apocalypse is happening, and, just put on your blinders and walk in a straight line. They're directing you every which way you go and what you have to do and where you have to go. And, and when you go to Nashville, it's like it was pre-2020. So, it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I make the joke to a lot of old friends that I speak to from New York all the time. And I tell them like, hey, I'm at work. It's 3 a.m. There's tons of drunk people. And there's tons of debauchery. And yeah, people are just dying all over the place. It looks like The Walking Dead. Did it appear as though it was like The Walking Dead to you? Or
no, it was a lot of fun. I got to say, it was a lot of fun. And, no one there really talked about COVID. You'd go into stores. There wasn't like, a ton of signs or, people telling you to put on your mask or any of that stuff. And there's something I was going to say, but I'm holding back for now.
I was going to ask you if you're choosing your words wisely.
I am. No, it was just nice to be in a place that you didn't feel like you were so worried about everything.
Yeah. No, I get that. Like we've been in constant contact, right? So, and I still have family that lives in New York City, so I'm constantly updated on what the policies are, what's going on. And that's the stuff that's outside of the news. Speaking of mandates and other things. So I've kind of been up on it, here outside of the school system, right? We were closed down for 2 weeks. And then in a span of maybe a month, 2 months after those initial 2 weeks, after that immediate school year, when the let's close for 2 weeks ended, everything felt like it went back to normal. Other than a few arguments, like masks in schools. That's been pretty much it. Since the school year that took off after that last March, So it was like we had a few months where it was a conversation. And we had a few weeks where masks were mandated. That was pretty much it. So for the, for that tagline of 2 weeks to slow the spread, for us, it almost felt that way. We're still having a lot of, debates about what should happen in the school system and some other regulations, but for the most part, nothing close to what you're dealing with in New York over there.
Right. So, we know that New York is very densely populated, especially now the city is getting back to normal standards. There are a lot more people in the streets, a lot more people in the buildings compared to before September. So I've been back in the office since June of 2020, not full time, but 2 to 3 days a week. And it was a ghost town up until September. Now,
September of this year or last year?
September this year.
Okay.
So for like a year and 3 months or whatever it is, the city was a complete ghost town. You could have a picnic on Park Avenue and not get hit by anybody, and not even cause a traffic jam. So now that everyone's going back to the office and still getting tested, people are still going for tests. Most people are vaccinated. We're still having people test positive in the office who are vaccinated. It's something that's not going to go away. So what is, and that's another thing. A vaccine stops the spread of something. So for the rest of the episode, I'm not going to call it a vaccine. I'm going to call it the COVID shot, because it's not a vaccine. I'm just going to put that out there.
Yeah, we had spoken about that earlier today. I believe before the FBI raided Project Veritas, one of the things they dropped was a leak of emails. I'm not sure if it was between Pfizer and the CDC. I'm not sure of who exactly it was, but the premise of the email was, we're going to have a hard time selling these things because by the traditional definition, these shots aren't a vaccine. So what do we do, and how do we go about potentially changing the definition so that it would fit that description? Now, I'm a little iffy on it. I can look up a few things while we're on the air. As I've said, I don't know which two agencies in particular. There were two major companies that were in this dispute, and there were emails that leaked. So we know that this conversation took place, and I'm pretty sure the definition of vaccine itself has changed in the past few months.
Do you really need to convince people that something is something if you just keep on calling it? As long as you give something a label and keep on labeling it that way, people will believe that. That seems to be. I mean, maybe my faith in the population is just that low, but it just seems that people will consider it, and it's true. They just consider these things vaccines, and when you try to discuss it with people, I know when I try to discuss it with people, they think I'm nuts. I don't believe it's not a vaccine. Stop calling it that.
Yeah. Well, there is another public event that took place actually today that I believe we're going to skim into that in a few moments, but that applies as well to just a public perception, right? The way they create a public perception. Whether you want to call it propaganda, whether you want to call it the news, maybe we change the definition of the news, so maybe it does fit that at this point. But yes, there's groupthink, and there's a certain way they spread information to each other and a certain trust for being part of that group, that they just blindly accept it for what it is, and they don't really look into things. So you've been dealing with a lot of that stuff over there, and until something started coming down federally over here, we had almost been experiencing nothing. So I guess I'll point out like the major thing, and you tell me if I'm correct. So Tennessee is a red state, almost blood red. And I think most people know exactly what I'm referring to in saying that. New York is a blue state, correct?
No, well, the city is. New York City is blue. The rest of the state is red. Long Island is red. Upstate is red. Albany is blue.
But the
New York
the
City blue.
the city's
New
where
York
all the stuff goes down. We know that.
Correct.
That's like the financial epicenter of the United States. Isn't the UN located over there as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's everything. So Manhattan rules that entire. I mean, I think it's one of the only spots in the entire United States where a mayor was going against the governor, and they were both going back and forth, almost as though they were the same power.
And yes, that it's probably the only. I don't know about LA, but yeah, it's probably the only place that can.
Yeah.
Say that. Yeah.
I mean, if you looked in the news, the things going back and forth between de Blasio and the other ex-mayor, I mean, ex-governor, we should all be really proud of. They were going back and forth left and right. And even the governor at the time had to make the remark that the mayor works for him. Do you remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah. They're both exceptional people.
Yes. Exceptional. That's a really good term. I was trying to think of a term to use. Yes. Exceptional is good. So, okay. So for the most part, the city, you would say, is more towards, I guess, what you would classify these days as the left.
Oh, yeah.
And here would be what you would classify as the right, even though some of those talking points 10, 20 years ago were actually kind of interchangeable.
Yeah, there seems to be an odd morph of terminology and definitions when it comes to the right and the left.
So it's not just when it comes to pharmaceuticals or dissemination of information, but also ideologies. So it seems like the definitions are changing of all of these things.
Yes, some are getting more extreme and others are being more accepting. It's weird.
More, oh, you're going in a different direction. I mean, we're going to hit that direction later on. I got that covered. But yeah, I know where you're going with that. So, so outside of that, what were some of the other things you noticed, like the difference, like culturally? And give me, if you can, an example of just a really negative stereotype of some of the aspects of the cultural differences. Stereotype that may not exactly be correct.
So, okay, this isn't only a Tennessee thing. So, because I've experienced it in other places outside of New York. So, gun control, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm back to riding the subways, and everybody, because of how bad the crime is in the city, and especially violent crimes, everybody is on like permanent watch. When you get on a subway, you just, if you look at everyone's eyes, you know, and everyone's wearing a mask, of course, because the air in the subway was not contaminated before COVID. So now everyone's wearing a mask in the subway, and everyone's eyes, you can see everyone's looking at everybody. One, they want to make sure everyone's wearing a mask because it makes a fucking difference. And two, I guess they're just wary of you know, who might, especially late at night or early in the morning. Anyway, so and mind you, anybody carrying a gun in New York City is not a licensed gun holder, right?
Right.
They're not licensed.
It's going to be a criminal that has it.
Right, correct. So Nashville, when you're in Nashville, like some of the other places I've been, were Arizona and North Carolina, Florida, right? They all have different gun laws, right? Different from New York, rather, should I say. You know, when you're walking around in Nashville, most of the people around you are probably carrying guns. But
Not
you,
even
you don't,
probably, almost definitely.
almost definitely, right? You're not going to ask somebody. Um, I didn't feel, I didn't feel unsafe. You know, it wasn't even a question. It wasn't even a thought. You know, but you get on a subway and it's a different feeling. You know.
Yeah, it's definitely, for anyone who's met me in Tennessee or met me in Florida, I am an ex New Yorker, 33 years of proud experience coming from Brooklyn. And yeah, I remember the mystique, especially when I used to talk to my immediate family about it and stuff like that. Like there was this weird stereotype that, oh, everybody's going to have a gun. How does that work? And for anyone who didn't know, I came from a kind of rough area of Brooklyn. I wasn't living in a top-notch neighborhood, So I had heard gunshots over the course of years, but you'd hear them in the area. And I would have to say in the span of time that I've been here, as opposed to the, a few of those spans of times out there, I've heard more gunshots in Brooklyn than I have out here. And I've been here for quite a few years. I wasn't one of the COVID runaways. I came out here a good amount of time before. Yeah, and you had mentioned that to me earlier, that you had a similar conversation, very similar to what I was talking to the family about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had this with someone in my family, talking about guns and what it's like. And I'm like, everyone's packing down there, and you don't feel afraid. There's no, because pretty much everybody who owns a gun down there, it's 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 cultural, and they have a respect for the weapon itself. I hate to call it, I wasn't trying to call it a weapon, but for that, one, it's a mechanical item, right? And they have a respect for it, how to not only how to properly use it, but how to clean it, maintain it, and just a general knowledge. Here, it's not like that. I was in was it last year or before COVID, end of 2019, Poconos. Poconos has a couple of firing ranges. So me, my, Christina and some of her family, we went, and I posted pictures. And again, my office is very liberal. I had people asking me like, "Oh, what were you doing? Why were you doing that?" It's like, because it's fun.
Oh my God.
Why not? If I skydive, which is also equally as dangerous, as unfortunately, I had a friend pass this year from doing just that. But no one's going to question. No one will be like, "Oh, that's awesome." Like, "Oh, you went skydiving? Awesome."
Well, I would definitely guarantee there are more skydiving accidents than range accidents. I mean, or even, I mean, you have to consider the fact that 90% of the times when something happens involving a gun in this country, we have over 300 million guns. That's a lot. A lot. So when you consider that you're getting a handful of events per year, how many people, what's the current population in the United States?
360 mil. I don't hear you.
Yeah, I'm looking it up. I have a noise gate on. So we have 329.5 million. Now, we have constitutional carry in a lot of states. So that basically means that you do not need a permit or a carry license to have it. So I'm going to do a quick search. How many people in the U.S. own guns? About 40% of Americans say they or someone in their household owns. So if they were to calculate it, 22% of individuals, that's about 72 million people. So now if you take that number and you kind of prorate that next to, let's say, car accidents or skydiving incidents. I mean, you don't have millions of people skydiving per year, right? So you would probably say that skydiving is pretty dangerous in comparison to that.
Well, you're technically dead until you land safely.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah, if that chute doesn't open, I mean, sayonara.
So you'd never skydive the way you just described that. You would never die until you're not dead.
So I really wanted to do it up until this year.
Okay. And then you just got massively turned off from it. Yeah,
Well,
I get that. I know who you're talking about.
yeah.
Yeah, no, that really wasn't a good thing.
No.
So are there any other like kind of differences that you noticed from the areas? Like just the way the people took themselves, the way they spoke, the way they treated each other?
I mean, everybody was really friendly, really outgoing. I mean, other than that, okay, New Yorkers are always in a rush. They always want to get to where they're going, right? Um, most will, like, if you ask for help, most will give you that help. They just don't want to
Mm-hmm.
be bothered. It's different. It's weird. Like I'm even like that. Like if when I'm headed home, don't one, don't slow me down on my way to the train or the bus. And two, like please don't ask me anything. But if you do ask me, like, if I see, or sometimes I'll see tourists with maps and I'll just be like, where you going? And and they're like, oh, we're trying to get. I'm like, all right, put that away. I'll tell you where to go. And I tell them where to go. One, it gets them out of my way. And two, it's just a nice thing to do
So you're
sometimes.
helping yourself is really what you're doing. You're acting like you're doing something nice, but you just want them to get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah, that is the trick. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we were going to caveat to another conversation, and I will apologize to our listeners because generally we're really heavy on interaction on chat. Today we're not as heavy, and it really is as lazy as I didn't find a place on my desk to put my other laptop to be able to monitor this. I have it to my right, so I have to turn, but I think we should take a look at some of the comments just real quick. See if there's anything in there. What's up to Vicky? She said that the intro song was her jam. I'm happy we played it for about 10 to 15 minutes. Hi, Margaret. How are you? I feel like you should sell this music as hold music. Marie's with us today. My name is Victoria Kluter. Okay. Nice to meet you. Let's see. So I'm coming through. Hi, Billy. We need to find some money in the budget for some hair dye. You look like you're made of reconstituted trilobite dust. All right. Well, it's better to have hair than none, Billy. Thank you for that.
I'm gonna call him Salt and Pepper.
He did gray up a lot since the last show. So then she says, fun fact, swamp donkeys who live up north are called water buffaloes.
Yeah, I cracked up at that.
Yeah, so Dustin's in the chat as well. Marisa just wondering how many of us on Facebook is the video getting interrupted? So apparently we hit a bunch of interruptions. It did not look like it was interrupting on YouTube or Twitch. Twitch will usually get you after the fact, from what I understand. But yeah, we're talking about some pretty rough stuff. Austin says, I just tagged you in a thing that was at Hill Air Force Base right next to my house. What do you think? I'll take a look at that in 2 seconds, Austin. See what that is. No, it's prophylactic. It's a placebo. I don't know what the hell they're talking about over here. Vicky says every city center mayor in Blue County was arguing with Abbott here. So she's from Texas. And they've had a lot of stuff going on too as well. An armed society is a polite society, which, yeah, is what we're talking about here. They made a remark about our levels. So he, I believe, is going to be joining the chat very soon. Mundane, also known as Dustin. So this way nobody gets confused. A few people are saying that the Facebook video sucks. If we're having problems with the feed, jump over to YouTube or Twitch. I believe there are links in the description on Facebook. Let me double check. Yes, we have the links to YouTube and Twitch on there. Facebook's got an algorithm. We did an episode on this already that it'll listen to what you're saying, and dependent upon what you're saying, it will either slow you down or it'll bog it. It'll give some issues. So, okay, with that being said, yes, and Marie actually validated as well. YouTube and Twitch are fine. So you notice the biggest difference was kind of like the gun debate coming from the mystique that New York puts on that topic.
Right. Right. I mean, I guess it's been a topic that I've kind of thought about a lot, especially, you know, well, it's just really funny because I listen to a lot of Joe Rogan, and he was saying how before he moved to Texas, that the lines to the gun stores in LA were longer than the Starbucks lines because of the amount of violence going on during the lockdown. So
Mm-hmm.
even even the liberals, the diehard liberals, were running to the gun store. Why? For protection.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the pot calling the kettle black.
Well, I don't know what people would expect. I mean, if you look at the Second Amendment was created so that people could defend themselves. And the funniest part of it is the primary reason it's defending yourself from a tyrannical government.
Government, correct.
It didn't even necessarily say personal defense.
No.
It was the ensuance of the people's ability to create a militia in the case of a tyrannical government. That was basically the point of the Second Amendment. Now, at this point in time, I do understand a lot of people say that technology's changed, situations changed, and that is extremely true. We've allowed, in my viewpoint, our government to use our tax money to go rogue in the name of representing us. So they created a military, and they took our money and put it into black ops and things like that, and into research that we do not have access to. We only have access to things that are considered commercial. They have access to technology that is not. And they've used it under the guise of national defense. So that other countries don't understand what we have, we keep it to ourselves. So we've funded a government that was able to basically arm itself, which I believe in the last few months, we've actually been able to witness what that can mean when a government is armed outside of its people. Does that make sense? Is what I'm saying making sense, or am I going down a rabbit hole too fast?
No, that's exactly correct.
Because if we had access to the same weaponry, we would be able to fight the tyrannical government. So a lot of the times when people make the argument, they say, hey, you know, the things we have wouldn't enable us to fight the government. That's correct. That's absolutely correct. But in the spirit of that argument, wouldn't that also mean that the Second Amendment should provide us what they have?
I don't know. I don't want.
It's a tricky situation
with the with their access to the button, the button. So
I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about the acoustical riot weapons they have, all of the other things, the lasers. Nobody should have nuclear. I personally believe that nobody should have it. I understand since it exists, somebody needs to keep everything else in check. I think nuclear power is actually it's something we should do more research into.
So we may not have their weapons, but we definitely have the numbers. So, and you can't just wipe out the whole country. I mean, that would be...
Then you have nothing to run.
Then you have nothing, right. So there is power in numbers. So, right, we're not going to have laser guns, or whatever, but...
Well, I guess that the point that I'm trying to make is kind of like, I'm responding to people that talk about the Second Amendment and say, well, hey, assault rifles, military weapons, those were not covered in the Second Amendment. That comes from a time when everybody had muskets. So should we give people muskets now and not have them have the assault rifles? But the problem was, at that time, the technology that was available to everybody was the same, and it was a musket. So if we were to take that same argument and move it forward to now, if the purpose is to be able to defend yourself of a tyrannical government, shouldn't the public have access to their weaponry? Not the other way around. Not that the assault weapons should be taken away, but that the bigger stuff they have should be afforded to us. Because we need the ability in our own Constitution to pretty much defend ourselves of our own government. Am I right or wrong?
I mean, I don't know.
The argument's actually the opposite.
No, I mean, even when we had muskets, the government had muskets, but they also had cannons. They had Gatling guns. They had a little bit more. They had ships. You know, who's got a ship with a cannon on it?
Maybe they got
I
to
don't
give
know.
us one.
You know, no, get out of here with that.
You can't.
So,
But what I'm saying is the people that generally argue the Second Amendment, you can't argue that because of the time frame, now we take away from the people and leave the government to have more. That wasn't the purpose of the amendment. So people
no,
conflate the
the
purpose of the amendment.
was for people to take arms and defend themselves.
Correct.
Right. So, sure. I mean, if the U.S. government goes into war with its people, they can't wipe everybody out.
No, logistically, it wouldn't make any sense. But
Right.
all
But
I'm
people
doing is
can.
arguing the logistics of the amendment itself.
I don't know. It doesn't. The amendment doesn't talk about having equal arms as the government.
Well, the people were pretty stupid for allowing the government to use the tax money to do that. So give me 1 second here. I'm going to test something out, guys. We have Mundane from a previous comedy show we were both on. He's coming in right now. I'm going to hit admit. Chris might go all wonky. The screen might get all messed up. And in that case, I'm going to hit the be right back scene and then just fix it. If not, we'll see what happens. So he is admitted to what I understand. Are you there, Mundane?
Oh, you probably just fucked it all up.
No.
I hear him.
It looks as though the banner's going to shift depending upon who's speaking. Chris, say something.
Something.
It did not switch back.
You know what? That
There
might
it
be
did.
fine.
It was the
might need to
volume.
make a quick phone call.
Okay.
So if you want to talk to Mundane for 5 minutes.
Yeah,
then
I'll
I'm
just
back.
ask him the quick question that I threw out.
Okay.
And then we'll continue from there.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mundane, how you doing tonight? Mundane, are you there? So it looks like we might be having some technical issues, as I've warned everybody. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Let's see some of these chats here. Marie says, how did Joe Rogan phrase it? Mutual combat. Yes. So that had something to do with, I believe it was in Chicago. Two, I guess you would call them criminals because Chicago has a lot of anti-gun laws. So they shouldn't have even had weapons to begin with. They got into a shootout in the middle of the street. Apparently one person was killed. And then when they were apprehended and released, they were questioned why no charges were pressed. And basically, I believe the mayor of Chicago said, well, it was mutual combat. So because it was mutual combat, everybody was pretty good. There was no reason to keep anybody jailed. So, yeah. So I would imagine you were saying that in context to what I was saying about the Second Amendment in that, it should be considered mutual combat. What was that?
I can finally hear you guys.
Oh, man. And let's see. And Coulard said, I would like weekly access to the death ray on the moon. Yes. I mean, so did you hear the last thing that I said, Mundane?
I did not, but I would like to say to Chris that I think they should give us a ship with a cannon. That'd be pretty cool.
I think we need a little more gain from your microphone. You're coming in pretty low.
That a little better?
Yes, that sounds
Okay.
a lot better. So what I proposed is that the Second Amendment has been a gigantic argument in the recent years, right? What does it mean? What does it say? And at the crux of it, it says that at the time that it was written, it was proposed that we were able to arm ourselves and have a people's militia in order to have the capability to fight against the tyrannical government. So most people's argument is, well, back then it was muskets and things like that. Now we have handguns, but it doesn't cover like an AR-15. It doesn't cover military-ready equipment. So we don't need those.
It kind of does. I mean, a musket is an arm. AR-15 is an arm. It didn't say the right to bear muskets. It said the right to bear arms. Arms could be swords, knives, pitchforks, whatever you can use to defend yourself.
Right, but I want to take this a couple of steps forward. If it literally stated that we need it in order to respond in the case that our own government was tyrannical, shouldn't that mean that instead of taking things away, we should have access to what they have?
Yeah, it gets a little rough there. I can see how we shouldn't have access to things that they have.
But is what I'm saying not making sense?
No, it makes sense. Realistically, with the way it's written, we should have access to what they have because we can't exactly defend ourselves against a government that has larger arms and a lot larger, like nuclear warheads and ships if all we have is a pistol or a rifle.
Correct. So what I'm trying to do is turn the argument around because I don't believe we should keep having the conversation. One thing that Chris mentioned from him taking a trip here to Tennessee was that one major thing that was different from Tennessee to New York is that there's this kind of stereotype and this mystique that states that have gun rights laws are dangerous. There are shootouts everywhere. It's a lot worse. And this is usually the point of view of people that don't really travel outside of just major cities that have the same set of laws. They tend to think that once you leave, it's the Wild West. Everybody's wild. You're from Florida. How do you feel about that stereotype?
It's just that. It's a stereotype. It's not what actually happens. I can tell you for a fact I have mine within reaching distance, but you don't see me shooting my neighbor. Well,
that's because you may have done it before you joined the podcast.
Well, you can't do that live on air. You'd get caught pretty quickly.
Especially Twitch.
Wait, you haven't been kicked off Twitch yet? You've been saying some pretty crazy stuff.
What, tonight?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't consider it crazy.
Crazy, but...
No, I think a lot of it's common sense. The next thing we were going to talk about, which I guess we can kind of get into, which is why I felt like the gun thing was a nice transition into it, is obviously the Rittenhouse case. Okay. Yeah. I'm not going to even get into the case. I'm not even going to touch the case at first. What I'm going to first state is I've gotten numerous text messages today from a lot of friends that are, in fact, very left-leaning. And their eyes were kind of opened to the fact that a lot of the people that are putting out their positions online, in fact, obviously didn't watch the trial. They're still posting things that have alternate facts.
Somebody to make an educated opinion based on actual news?
I would hope.
You live in America. Think again.
So let me read some of these texts. I told him I wouldn't say his name because obviously this is very, nobody wants to.
Controversial?
Well, it shouldn't be, right? If you're talking about things like this, like opinions, and you're also living in a country that obviously every state has its own laws. So you would imagine that you would need to have conversation in order to kind of be in a democracy, right? The definition of democracy is people vote for the laws that they want and they get to live the way they want to live. So you would imagine in a democracy there would be open conversation about things so that you can get things done and find a midway where everyone would be happy. We're not living in that anymore.
No.
If we were ever living in it. So let's see. So he types to me concerning the Rittenhouse case. And I'm going to have to filter some of this stuff in the middle. Let me go back. I should have had this prepped, but I never have anything prepped.
Wow. Way to go.
So he writes, there are people that just virtue signal. They either virtue signal or they're clowns, and I can't tell which it is. And then he asks me, one guy, is blank trying to get left brownie points, or does he actually believe in what he is posting? He posts something saying Kyle was throwing white powder hand signs up in the air in the picture, and the picture that he posted was so fake and poorly photoshopped, my mind is blown. Then he writes, you know me, I'm far from a conservative. I'm actually on the left, and I hate guns. But law is law, and morals and hindsight have nothing to do with that. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, doesn't matter. The facts that are according to Wisconsin state laws, it was self-defense. And I said, yes, absolutely. And then he said, and anyone who watched the actual footage can see what happened. I have no idea. I had no idea until a week ago that there were no people of color involved. My mind was blown. I was positive he shot a person of color by the way it had been covered, quote unquote. The only reason I did research is my friend and another friend were fighting over the case while we were gaming, and it stood out to me because I had not followed any of it. But I was curious, so I did some research, and I was shocked as to what I found and how they villainized the kid. And this is coming from somebody who I've known them since I'm about 14 years old. They're progressive. I wouldn't say massively progressive, but progressive enough that that wouldn't be something they'd normally say. But he actually admitted that he hadn't done his research. He went and did it, and now he's kind of shocked at the way the news is reflecting the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Well, that's something else we need to stop calling the news. They're not. I don't feel like they portray the news rather than mostly their opinion, right? So
those are the overpaid figureheads on TV you're talking about, right?
correct. And these people who just, they verbalize garbage for everyone to listen to, and then you're supposed to believe what they say. So
Even though it's 90% scripted
correct.
across all news platforms.
Right. It's the same story. Everyone just says the same story. You have like 50 different news stations, just regurgitating the same shit.
And the problem is,
So-
it's not that they're just regurgitating the same story and that the story is just, here's the facts, make your own opinion. They're regurgitating other people's opinions that they are trying to push as fact.
Correct. Right. So I'm sorry. Yeah. It's not the story. Rather, it's someone's opinion about something. Right. Correct.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing how the news is covering things and saying things that if you even sat to watch the trial for 3 hours, you can watch a condensed version of the trial. And at least you'll see footage. You'll get a clear explanation from both the defendant and the prosecutor. And you'll be able to get a pretty good outline of how this thing went down. You can see the evidence. You could see who was involved. You can hear what happened. But people, instead of that, are just kind of, I guess, running to Don Lemon and grabbing whatever they can from there. And everything's still just an opinion piece. But it's amazing how loud spoken people are when they haven't even looked at anything. Like, I even told a couple of people recently, they were asking me my opinion on things, and I said, did you watch the trial? And they said, I didn't really get a chance. I said, then we can't talk about it. And even this show is supposed to be a beacon of debate. But when it comes to that, I find it hard to talk to people about when they didn't even bother to watch anything.
Are you shocked? I mean, as long as you can make people laugh, it must mean you're telling the truth, because that's what it seems like they all flock to, right? Don Lemon, Bill Maher, Jon Stewart. No, I kind of like Jon Stewart. Who's the other one? I mean, they're all the same. They make you laugh at the same time. They're basically feeding you their ideology. So, and people just absorb it. They're like sponges.
Well, I think what's more surprising about it, to me, is that every other time we got into situations like this, they were ideological discussions or political discussions that you can tell somebody may not have done as much research as they could have, or some of the research may have been from alternate news media, right? Like, we have a trial. We have a legit trial we can watch, and the evidence was presented. There isn't much room for fault here. You know what I mean? When somebody's sitting there arguing it and saying that a person of color was shot, right there, we're completely in another universe. You did not pay even a semblance of attention to it. You get what I'm saying? This isn't ideological necessarily anymore. You could be ideological about what you believe the law should be at certain places, but when facts of the trial that you witnessed and heard from witnesses, from the prosecutors, from everything, when you're watching the videos, and then somebody tells you a fucking dinosaur ran out in the middle of the street, they didn't do shit. And they shouldn't even be talking about it.
So what I've noticed is most people, high percentage of people watching this and paying close attention are people on the right. People on the left are just getting their information from Don Lemons, basically.
Oh
So,
man, imagine multiple of them existing.
but they are all the same. Aren't they all the same? Is it just me?
Some are more obnoxious than others.
To a varying degree, fine. But like they basically all spew the same shit. So
Yeah. They call it the Associated Press. So basically, the Associated Press writes the statement. That's why when you flip the channels, they'll generally all say the same exact tagline.
right.
Because they're given the same exact information and they all pronunciate it the same way. Like they're probably trained to do it that way. They say the same exact taglines, the same everything, the same. It's just, what do you think, Mundane?
So I haven't seen a lot on the trial. I've only watched like a couple of videos. I've spent maybe 25 minutes on it.
So
That's
you're
why I was
actually
kinda
going to be
being
humble
quiet.
about this.
Yeah, that's why I was being quiet. I really, in my opinion, from the videos, the evidence that I have seen, it does look like it was in fact just self-defense, but I haven't seen enough of it. I mean, I've seen the video, and I've also seen the video where the guy was actually being asked, "Did you have a gun pointed at his head?" And he literally said yes, which means for self-defense. But that's pretty much, I've like spent 25 minutes on it, so I didn't want to weigh in too heavily.
Okay. Well, again, I already gave you credit. You're being humble about it. If you hadn't watched it, you're admitting that. You're admitting that you're, I don't want to use the term uneducated. That sounds insulting. You're unaware
Yeah,
of this
please.
particular situation. 90% of the people I see on social media are completely unaware and they're being very loud. And I think that doesn't do anything justice at that point. Especially because this case, I think most Republicans, as Chris mentioned, are paying attention to this because it has a direct effect on the Second Amendment.
Yeah. I really think, that's who it's really important to. I think it's important for them. Like I said before, it's owning a gun it's a pride, and it's also cultural. So I think it really has an effect on a lot of them. So, and it's an attack. This whole thing's an attack on that. So
I would agree.
So I really feel like they're really watching this and they want to see what happens, and it also goes. So okay, this trial is a big deal, right? It is a big deal, but we had a conversation about what was going on in Chicago. There was those shootouts recently. The cops were there. There was other people there, and everyone just let it happen. The cops let it happen, and when the guy was dead on the street, there was no arrests, and they said that it was, I forgot the word they used, but basically it was a fair fight, and that was it. There will be no arrests. They're not prosecuting this or going after the shooters because it was technically a fair fight. So
Mutual combat.
Oh, there you go. Mutual combat. That was
the
word.
term used.
Yes.
That's why I think we need more military gear for mutual combat.
There's no big national outcry over that. Which, don't you find that a little funny?
Yes. The media is definitely driven by.
Oh, you know what I
ideology.
found funny? I found funny that they actually let the National Guard in now for this verdict, but not for when there was looting going on.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I had made that comment on, I think it was like Jerry News or something. It was like, oh, the National Guard is going to be in. I'm like, wow, they let that in now, except for now, if they had the National Guard in prior, there would be no trial. This wouldn't have happened.
No, probably not. And I had mentioned to somebody earlier today, I said, from watching a lot of the trial, I almost feel as though the prosecutor was dumping it on purpose. I felt like a lot of what that guy said, a lot of what he presented, even the way he represented the individuals who were killed, it sounded to me like he was just throwing a throwing the ball out. Like, here, catch it and it's over.
I really don't think they had a case. You know, did they even really have that much of a case to go on?
No, it didn't seem as though they did.
No, what did you have? You had a 17-year-old kid with a gun getting attacked and not firing until the last minute. So, you know, when his life was in jeopardy, he protected himself. I mean, that's the whole case said and done.
Yeah.
And then you can make the argument, oh, well, he shouldn't have been there. He had no business being there. Neither did the rooters, the rioters or the looters, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then then there's the argument, oh, they were protesting. No. That's not protesting. There's a clear distinction between protesting, rioting, and looting. And then, and burning down a whole fucking city. So,
yeah. I'm boggled at how they ignore that. They still say mostly peaceful. And I mean,
mostly peaceful protesting.
Even when they were showing the news cycles, they were literally standing in front of buildings flaming and going, it's mostly peaceful. And it's like, dude, that looks like a war zone. Like, they had court buildings up on fire. They had police stations on fire. The whole place is getting lit up. And they're sitting there going, oh, mostly peaceful. And they're standing in front of it. They could have just turned the camera slightly. They could have just tilted it and looked down a quiet street and went, oh, mostly peaceful. No, they put it right on the big fucking burning thing and then stood right in front of it. It's almost like they were testing. It was like a cognitive test. They wanted to see, like, is anybody going to notice this? Like, this is a giant, giant building just engulfed in flames. And is anybody going to realize that I'm saying the stupidest goddamn thing in the face of the fucking planet right in front of it? I'm telling them their eyes are wrong. I mean, to me, that was outrageous. Mundane's still quiet.
It was all CGI, Lou.
Oh, could you imagine that?
It was all fake.
I was going to weigh in and say, what you can look at it from another side, whereas the person who is doing the news broadcast, the cameraman, the actual anchor, you could look at it as they see that the news cycle that we have in today's world is kind of corrupt and scripted, and they're trying to show you the real thing without getting themselves in trouble.
You think that's what it is? But they're telling you it's not what you're looking at. They're saying it live.
They could be saying, oh, mostly peaceful, because they're reading off of a teleprompter. They're being told to say that. That doesn't mean that's what they want to say. Because I know of a few news anchors that have literally gotten fired for saying what they want to say about the whatever happened, the event, or about the news station and the type of news that they actually put out.
So Marie had put something into the YouTube comments. She says, when people argue this, I wonder if they hear what they are saying and how ridiculous they sound. So I'd like to know who that was actually to, whether it was me or Mundane. But and she said, like that meme I had looked at earlier, why didn't Kyle let the guy kill him before he tried to defend himself? Yes. And I've heard statements very similar to that. Why didn't he just wait to see what happened and then defend himself? He already had a gun pointed at him. I think it's pretty proper that's time.
Right.
I think we've reached the pinnacle of it.
The next step was death. So.
Mm-hmm. But nobody watched the video. Nobody watched it. So 90% of the people that get into the conversation, like I said, have no right to really be in it because they didn't watch it. They don't know. They listen to Lemon. You are just staring off.
I mean, yeah.
Do you think this is just kind of a media circus?
I mean, it is, because I still hear people talking about how this trial is bullshit, and they let him off, and and they were talking about the judge, how the judge should have just what was it? The judge should have just walked him out the door and patted him on the back or something. It was just talking all kinds of stupid shit, and I'm like, because again, they're just getting their news from these opinion pieces here in the city. They're not watching the trial. They're not. And at first, honestly, at first I didn't watch the trial either up until a couple of weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, I forget when, and and I had gotten into it, um, but yeah, I don't know. It's like it's like the assholes leading the blind. That's what it's like.
Is that a new way of is that your version of the blind leading the blind? Is the assholes leading the blind?
Well, that's what it's like, because right, those people fully well know what they're doing. Right, they're not blind.
The people
they
at the
know
top.
what they're doing, and then they're just they're just hurdling the sheep this way. Come on, guys, come on, you know.
Do you think it could have been timed in a sense?
Timed how?
Like time to kind of potentially mask other events.
I mean, that always goes on. That's always a thing.
So Paul jumped in. How you doing, Paul? Sorry for interrupting you. I just saw this really quick. And Trinity said the whole world is a media circus.
It's true. The media runs this country. Absolutely runs this country.
Well, are you sure the media does it or other people do? And they're telling the media what they're supposed to say.
Not only should there be like a real separation between church and state, there should be a separation where people in government should not be allowed to marry or have relationships with people in media. And I know that kind of sounds cruel and maybe a bit overstepping bounds in some ways, but they're totally influencing what people believe in here.
It's a conflict of interest. It's
absolutely
by far. Have you ever seen the YouTube video brought to you by Pfizer?
No.
Oh, man. All right. I guess that's going to open us up to one of the new segments that we're going to have on this show. I'm going to load it up for you really quick so I could show everybody. And what I want to say, I just got a personal text message from somebody, and I want to let them know that you just figured out where this is going. I'll just say that. He figured it out, and let me load this up and flick the screen real quick. So this is the exact epitome of conflict of interest. Can you see this, Mundane?
Yes.
And hear it?
Yeah.
All right, so I want everybody to see this real quick. And take a good look at what shows they are.
Is brought to you by Pfizer.
CBS Health Watch sponsored by Pfizer.
Anderson Cooper 360. Brought to you by Pfizer.
ABC News Nightline. Brought to you by Pfizer. Making a difference. Brought to you by Pfizer.
CNN Tonight. Brought to you by Pfizer. Early Start. Brought to you by Pfizer. Friday night on Aaron Burnett Out Front. Brought to you by Pfizer.
This Week with George Stephanopoulos is brought to you by Pfizer.
This weather report brought to you by Pfizer.
Today's countdown to the royal wedding is brought to you by Pfizer.
And now a CBS Sports Update brought to you by Pfizer.
Meet the Press Data Download brought to you by Pfizer.
This portion of CBS This Morning sponsored by Pfizer.
On how to find the hidden sugars in the American family diet. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Oh, and it pulled right into vaccine trial whistleblower. Hey, buddy. Yeah, so... Any opinions on that?
Is this
Brought to you by Pfizer.
In the chats, does anybody have anything to comment on, or you guys, anything you want to say? I mean, I believe that's a pretty blatant conflict of interest for anyone looking for it. What do you guys think?
In this episode of Camarilla Cafe,
Brought to you by Pfizer.
I think we should open up with that next episode. Brought to you by Pfizer.
We didn't make a little cue card and everything that you can flash on screen.
Yes.
And then every third frame of next show, you need to flash Pfizer on the screen like the movies used to do with popcorn and soda.
Yeah, it's bad. And we do have another situation coming up, another conflict of interest that I was going to bring up. But I did want to kind of, just see like, so what's the famous thing they usually say with conspiracy theories, right? They usually say that if the media is going into a total frenzy, if people are flipping out, fighting against each other, generally they're creating some type of distraction, right? That's usually been the case for most conspiracies. So I figured we'll go right back to my other screen. I guess this new setup isn't working too bad today. So we're going to come here. And I want to show everybody that this week, Ghislaine Maxwell just went on trial after 15 months. So while we're all arguing over the Second Amendment, so let me just piece this together for everybody in case they didn't know. I'll give some backstory. And I also want to mention that on our 10th episode, I was going to say anniversary, we're going full circle into what practically started this show, and we're coming right back to it. In case nobody knows, Ghislaine Maxwell was the groomer for Jeffrey Epstein. So
didn't this get like zero media coverage, like no news coverage, just a picture?
Bingo.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even a picture, it's just a drawing.
It's a drawing.
Yeah. There are no pictures for whatever reason. So in this article, I'll go over it really quick. She finally goes on trial after 15 months of remand. Associate of financier Jeffrey Epstein faces charges of sex trafficking and enticement of minors. Now, this article, let me see if this was the one. Yeah, Sunday the 14th. So when they say she finally goes on trial, they're talking about last Monday. Ghislaine Maxwell is to emerge from a New York City prison cell on Monday after a 15-month wait for the start of a trial for sex trafficking children, perjury, and the enticement of minors while she was a close associate of the late financier Jeffrey Epstein. So she's been in the Brooklyn Detention Center right after her arrest since July 2020. They've held on to her until just now to start the trial. At the same exact time that they basically put Kyle Rittenhouse on trial, and now we're right back into the whole BLM protest fight. And nobody even knows what's going on with that, but they're fighting about it. So now we can go down this rabbit hole a little bit. If anybody's got any questions, just hit me in the comments. Let's see. So I will read this really quickly. This is from Trinity because it looks like a private message. I guess she wanted me to really see that. Have you heard about the Astro World Fest that Travis Scott put on where 8 people were killed in Texas only a couple of days ago? There's a conspiracy around it that it was sacrificial and that they wouldn't shut it down because no matter what happened, even the advertisements for the festival were suspicious. I don't want to switch up the topics you have for tonight, but I think you'd really get into it. Yes, I am aware of that. We could probably get into that in a couple of minutes, to be honest. I know plenty about that one already. But yeah, so let's just put it this way. So she's caught, she's going on trial. And now there's another article that I could show people from the Rolling Stone. Now we're talking about conflict of interest, was talking about who actually influences the media, who influences these people that go out and give the news and give their viewpoints and tell you what to think. Everybody's absolutely horrified. High society is bracing itself for Ghislaine Maxwell trial. So to give a reminder, she worked for Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein had a black book, as well as flight logs. So he was associated, him and his island were associated with just about every large politician in the United States. He was linked to the royal family in Britain. He was linked to other leaders of world countries. Nobody has any clue where he got his money from. He lived in the only private mansion in all of Manhattan, New York City. The only one. He lived in it. It had a helicopter pad on his roof. He had his own island, which was neighboring Joe Biden's brother's island, which is, you cannot get on a boat and go to these islands. They're private.
Technically, that's Joe Biden's island. He sold it to his brother for pennies.
Well, that's one thing that they discovered with the trial for Ghislaine Maxwell was because she has a license to what the hell is it? It's a submarine license. You wouldn't think many people had these, right? Unless they worked for the military. She has a submarine license, and the dock is actually on Joe Biden's brother's island. So these people were actually capable. Not only were they caught trafficking, I mean, this is public knowledge at this point. He was guilty. I guess she's on trial, so we don't know if she's guilty yet, although we really know she's guilty. Yeah, she had a submarine. It was docked in Biden's island. Now, the plane records did have Joe Biden on it. A number of really, really high-profile actors, actresses, politicians, world leaders. So I would imagine that this is a really big deal.
He also had a ranch. Don't forget the ranch.
Yeah, and he had a ranch. So while we're sitting here fighting about what happened with Kyle Rittenhouse and fighting to preserve our own rights, to even defend ourselves, because you know who'd write in law to take away the rights? These people right here that all flew on that plane, went to that island. So this trial is happening right now. This article is about, it was rollingstone.com. I could put a link into the comments if anybody wants to read it, but it's pretty much describing how every highbrow, high society person is absolutely shitting their pants right now. You would imagine why there is no media coverage. Instead, we're hearing Kyle Rittenhouse with a pretty clear case. What are you going to say, Chris?
I'm sorry. I also liked how that article, because I'm funny you brought that up, talked about how great she looked. She looked even better than she did 10 years ago as she walked into the courtroom.
I literally just read the article or the paragraph right below that, and that's the first thing I was thinking. I was like, fuck this article. They literally started off by describing how she looks. It doesn't fucking matter how she looks. Tell us what you're fucking talking about.
Right. And it's like, that's like the first 3 or 4 paragraphs they're talking about her and how glamorous she is, and, you know, how she's funny and witty and blah, 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 blah. Like, go fuck yourself.
Yeah. She was the one that sat in the driver's seat of the white van. That's how she got people in there. So let's see. So she says,
you know,
well, forgive
Satan
no news on this trial.
Is very good at being witty and very good at drawing people in as well. That's why he's Satan. So,
okay. So Vicky says the trial actually hadn't begun yet. But once arguments begin, if there's nothing, then I'll start bitching. Well, there's nothing to report just yet. Let's let arguments begin first. Okay. You are actually incorrect on that in one aspect, Vicky. You are incorrect. And now we're going to go into a circle again, into conflict of interest. So that's a really good topic here. Let's take a look at this New York Post article. Ghislaine Maxwell judge will finish trial despite possible promotion. Isn't that nice? So now I don't want to make tremendous assumptions here from looking at her photo. I'll let the article describe what we're about to get into. Anyone else from looking at her picture is probably going to know the obvious. I don't have to say it. The Manhattan federal judge presiding over the Ghislaine...
article.
What was that?
It says it in the article.
Oh, yeah, that's going to do it for me. The Manhattan federal judge presiding over the Ghislaine Maxwell sex trafficking trial will finish the case, even though she may be promoted to a position on a federal appeals court. So she's getting a promotion in the middle of this trial. Now, and I have an article that's coming after this, kind of stating that it's not legal for her to do it, but I guess she's just going to do it anyways because the federal government can do whatever they want. I will continue to do my day job, which includes presiding over this trial until completion. Judge Allison Nathan said in court Wednesday morning after reports of her possible promotion to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals were published. She added that she was honored at the possibility to serve on the appeals court. In a statement Tuesday, U.S. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, DNY, Democrat, New York, said he would recommend Nathan for the appeals court job, calling her an outstanding jurist. Allie Nathan is an outstanding judge for the Southern District of New York, and her experience, legal brilliance, love of the rule of law, and perspective would be invaluable in ensuring the federal judiciary fulfills its obligation to ensure equal justice for all, Schumer said in a statement. So very quickly, you could just grab Google, which I did, and I searched Chuck Schumer, Jeffrey Epstein. And I didn't really have to go far at all. As you see, I didn't click on any of these links. Anyone at home can do this themselves. This isn't very difficult. Or I could send you a, I can Google this for you link. And yeah, fact check. There's a fact check. So there's even a theory out there that he was on the island. There was a photo going around. I don't know if it was real or not, but be aware there was a photo going around. He's going to donate contributions from Jeffrey Epstein to charity. Here's the photo of man kissing child. It's absolutely not the senator. Schumer got thousands in donations from Jeffrey Epstein. Chuck Schumer calls on Alex Acosta to resign after Epstein. So Alex Acosta is another name, but Schumer's asking another guy. He's got to be a Republican for Florida. Alex Acosta. Who is Alex Acosta? I've heard that name before a bunch of times. He's definitely a Republican.
I thought he was in the news. Or am I thinking about a different Acosta?
He's an attorney and a politician.
And he's a Republican.
United States Secretary of Labor.
He's a Republican for the state of Florida. So, funny, Schumer came up a whole ton of times with Jeffrey Epstein, but now you also know that there's some kind of link between Jeffrey Epstein and Alex Acosta. This is a rabbit hole we can do for fucking 90 hours. This is never going to end.
He basically knew everybody.
He basically knew everybody. This is pretty high profile. So now, somebody who had a photo on an island with a child that they're denying it's him, he was on the flight logs. He was obviously part of the donation list because he had plenty of money from Epstein for donations. He is giving a high recommendation of this judge. Okay? Ms. Nathan is already an accomplished and widely respected judge in the Southern District of New York and would bring a passion for the rule of law and justice to her post on the Second Circuit, as well as profound integrity, compassion, and expertise, he added. If appointed by President Biden, Nathan would be the second openly gay woman to serve as a federal appellate judge, Schumer said. So now, I hate coming to just rushing to judgment, but she's not a Republican defending your Second Amendment. She's a Democrat in New York City. Okay? I think, is that a safe assumption to make, guys? Or anybody listening out there? That it's pretty, I think we're good.
You know she's getting off.
I think we're good with that. Right. So, and 2-3 names in this article right off the bat are linked to her. They're linked directly to her. And she's getting a promotion. What was that?
I just wanted to say to Vicky, because she's saying, how am I incorrect? You're incorrect because even though the trial hasn't technically started, the pawns are already in motion. She's going to get off scot-free. I mean, everyone kind of knows it.
Yeah. Well, there's already bullshit happening. If the trial didn't start itself, maybe we're lacking details, but look at what the situation is in and of itself. And now we'll skip to the next article. New wrinkle in Ghislaine Maxwell trial as judge may be promoted. I would imagine that's a problem, right? Somebody's getting promoted in the middle of a trial. And they're getting promoted by people who might actually be called out in the trial. These are people that were his associates, her associates. We can even stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein at this point. We could just talk about her because they were a package deal. Okay? The president has nominated, so it's official. The president has nominated Judge Allison J. Nathan for a seat on a federal appeals court, but the fraud case would put her in an unusual predicament. Okay? So the White House announced that that's who they picked. Has spent a decade this week is overseeing that. Let's see where it is. Ms. Maxwell has pleaded not guilty. The trial, in which opening arguments is scheduled for November 29th, okay, could last 6 weeks. Defense lawyers and prosecutors have said in court filings. So she's already been promoted before the trial even starts. If Nathan is confirmed by the Senate during the trial, she could still continue to preside in the case. Two legal ethics ethics experts said. Judges are frequently elevated to appeals courts from lower courts when they're actively involved in trials and cases. Now, why is this even a conversation? Action to Mr. Epstein, the worldwide attention is attracted. Is anything but
and the other thing is, she's only on trial for four allegations of sex trafficking and
six, I believe.
6? I thought it was 4. Anyway, so the rest of these people are going to be scot-free. Whatever was in that, was it her dossier or whatever it was? None of that is going to get leaked out. Absolutely none of that. So,
yeah,
it's only 4 allegations, if I'm not wrong. I thought it was 4.
Well, if it goes like the last trial surrounding this, she's either going to get off scot-free or end up dead before the end of the trial.
I don't know. I mean, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole of things. I saw a photo of her the other day, and she's got a black eye. For anyone who
stab herself in the back.
For anyone who really follows conspiracy theory, that there's something up with the black eye thing. It's symbolic of something. I don't think she got jumped in jail. She's actually been in solitary confinement, I believe, this entire time. But how she got a black eye is some kind of shocker. Same reason the Pope had one, the president had one, and I don't know. There's something with that black eye. But anyways, yes, I believe we already have a conflict of interest. And this trial is just about starting, and nobody's talking about it at all. Nobody's talking about it. So I personally believe that what we're dealing with right now, not only are we defending our own rights in the rest of the United States, because we're also stuck in this weird mandate, non-mandate kind of pickle, but this is happening and nobody's talking about it. Judge Nathan was appointed to the district court by President Barack Obama in 2011. She earlier served as a special counsel to the Solicitor General of New York State in the State Attorney General's office. Before that, she was an associate White House counsel and special assistant to Mr. Obama. This sounds like the perfect person to judge a trial involving one of the biggest sex traffickers that we've found, that's involved with all of the following people. It's like she's representing her own family.
Right. And some people might be saying, well, you're making a case to say Obama, he hasn't really been, his name has not really come up in connection with Epstein, but his vice president was Joe Biden, and Joe Biden has. So.
Well, yeah. His name was in the book. The islands are right next to each other. Well, let's see. We could do a quick, nothing wrong with looking it up. Jeffrey Epstein. Barack Obama. I'm probably not even spelling that right. It'll correct me. An old vacation picture of the Obama family. Here's a fact check. It came up. Look, you're looking right at my screen. Claim that Obama gave Jeffrey Epstein the medal. Yeah, I don't know. Listen. All I'm saying is, and here's a book, From Jeffrey Epstein to the Clintons, from Obama and Biden. The book on Amazon. Obama administration didn't oversee Epstein plea deal. Here are the famous people Jeffrey Epstein was connected to. Okay, that might be a good link. I don't know if it's going to be all of them. It's insider, and it started with a picture of Trump. Oh, they're not going to let me do it. I'm not going to do a guest pass with this bullshit. Yeah, the first thing they showed was Trump. But look, you know what? I would be a hypocrite to say that he wasn't involved with Trump. He was.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, it was everybody in high society. He was connected to everybody.
Biden's top scientist met Jeffrey Epstein twice. Look, all you got to do is Google this, people.
Look at Bill Gates. Bill Gates was heavily connected.
Man, are you kidding? Bill Gates. Let's take a look at that. Let's take a look at that one too. Because there was a very, very awkward interview between them. So he had an interview with PBS.
Was reported.
So let me cue this up real quick. Everybody, let me know if you have a problem hearing it out there. Let's go back to our little thing here, and let's take a look.
That time that you had a number of meetings with Jeffrey Epstein, who, when you met him 10 years ago, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution from minors. What did you know about him when you were meeting with him, as you've said yourself, in the hopes of raising money?
You know, I had dinners with him. I regret doing that. He had relationships with people he said, you know, would give to global health, which is a interest I have. You know, not nearly enough philanthropy goes in that direction. You know, those meetings were a mistake. They didn't result in what he purported, and I cut them off. You know, that goes back a long time ago now. So there's nothing new on that.
It was reported that you continue to meet with him over several years, and that, in other words, a number of meetings. What did you do when you found out about his background?
Well, you know, I've said I regretted having those dinners, and there's absolutely nothing new on that.
Is there a lesson for you, for anyone else looking at this?
Well, he's dead, so you know, in general, you always have to be careful. And I'm very proud of what we've done in philanthropy. Very proud of the work of the foundation. You know, that's what I get up every day and focus on.
So that wasn't slightly uncomfortable, was it?
Yeah, he slightly
No, not at
sidestepped
all.
on all the questions. And then if you notice throughout the entire video, about every 3 sentences, he would look off to his left and then continue talking. And he always took a pause when he looked off to his left.
Yeah, there were quite a few uncomfortable signs there that people usually do when they're under distress, of potentially lying. I do actually have another video that a lot of people might be interested in seeing this one as well. I could bring up another one. Where's that coming from? Wow, it's like I was saying 2 different things. So I'm going to load up another one here. Two weeks ago, there was a few days ago that Rand Paul had really dug into Anthony Fauci really badly. And it doesn't really look like Fauci's feeling good about it anymore. See, 2 weeks ago, 6 months, 3 weeks ago. He looked rather nervous. So while
killed millions of people, so
what was that?
he should be nervous. I said he killed millions of people, so he should be nervous. I don't know how he fucking sleeps at night.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. So in the meantime, what do you guys think of that conflict of interest with the judge?
From what I gather, it's not uncommon to continue a case once you've started it already. However, it just, so what everyone is saying about the Kyle Rittenhouse judge on the left is what people on the right is going to say about this judge. Because listen, we want to see her burn, and we want to see everybody she's associated with burn. Unfortunately, that's just not going to happen.
Now, do you think she'll end up disappearing?
Oh, yeah, completely. Once she gets off, you'll never hear from her again. She's going to be like Kaiser Sose.
What do you think, Mundane?
Yeah, it seems very sketchy that all of a sudden, first off, just all of a sudden now that this case is popping up, that she's getting her promotion. Because, you know, that could have happened months before the case or months after the case. It doesn't have to happen right at this point in time, especially with the names that are connected to her and connected to the case. Seems a little set up.
Yeah, I would agree.
It seems like it was more so a, hey, we make this this ruling go in my favor, and you get a new job type thing.
Mm-hmm. And it's obvious that they're all linked on numerous angles, right? They're not just linked ideologically because she's obviously a Democrat, but she's getting promoted by all of the other Democrats. She's obviously LGBTQ plus whatever else is added to that now. All right, now I'm going to shut up before I get stunned with something. So I'm going to come back here again. Take a look at this real quick.
I don't expect you today to admit that you approved of NIH funding.
Now, before it keeps going, I just want to say that this was posted November 17th, so this pretty much just happened. But if you want to talk about somebody looking like they're under distress or kind of getting backed into a corner, just take a look at this.
Function research in Wuhan. But your repeated denials have worn thin, and a majority of Americans, frankly, don't believe you. Even the NIH now admits that EcoHealth Alliance did perform experiments in Wuhan that created viruses not found in nature that actually did gain in lethality. The facts are clear. The NIH did fund gain-of-function research in Wuhan, despite your protestations. You can deny it all you want, but even the Chinese authors of the paper, in their paper, admit that viruses not found in nature were created, and yes, they gained in infectivity. Your persistent denials, though, are not simply a stain on your reputation, but are a clear and present danger to the country and to the world. As Professor Kevin Esfelt of MIT has written, gain-of-function research looks like a gamble that civilization can't afford to risk. And yet here we are again, with you steadfast in your denials. Why does it matter? Because gain-of-function research with laboratory-created viruses not found in nature could cause a pandemic even worse the next time. We're suffering today from one that has a mortality of approximately 1%. They're experimenting with viruses that have mortalities of between 15 and 50%. Yes, our civilization could be at risk from one of these viruses. Experiments that combine unknown viruses with known pandemic-causing viruses are incredibly risky. Experiments that combine unknown viruses with coronaviruses that have as much as 50% mortality could endanger civilization as we know it. And here you sit, unwilling to accept any responsibility for the current pandemic and unwilling to take any steps to prevent gain-of-function research from possibly unleashing an even more deadly virus. You mislead the public by saying that the published viruses could not be COVID. Well, exactly no one is alleging that. No one is alleging that the published viruses by the Chinese are COVID. What we are saying is that this was risky type of research, gain-of-function research. It was risky to share this with the Chinese, and that COVID may have been created from a not yet revealed virus. We don't anticipate the Chinese are going to reveal the virus if it came from their lab. You know that, but you continue to mislead. You continue to support NIH money going to Wuhan. You continue to say you trust the Chinese scientist. You appear to have learned nothing from this pandemic. Will you today finally take some responsibility for funding gain-of-function research in Wuhan?
Senator, with all due respect, I disagree with so many of the things that you've said. First of all, gain of function is a very nebulous term. We have spent, not us, but outside bodies, a considerable amount of effort to give a more precise definition to the type of research that is of concern that might lead to a dangerous situation. You are aware of that. That is called P3CO.
We're aware that you deleted gain of function from the NIH website.
Well, I can get back to that in a moment if we have time. But let's get back to the operating framework and guide rails of which we operate under. And you have ignored them. The guidelines are very, very clear that you have to be dealing with a pathogen that clearly is shown and very likely to be highly transmissible in an uncontrollable way in humans and to have a high degree of morbidity and mortality, and that you do experiments to enhance that. Hence the word EPA. EPPP, enhanced pathogens of pandemic.
So when
potential
EcoHealth
pandemic.
Alliance took the virus
Well, then I would love to finish.
SHC014 and combined it with WIV1 and caused a recombinant virus that doesn't exist in nature, and it made mice sicker, mice that had humanized cells, you're saying that that's not gain-of-function research?
According to the framework and guidelines.
So what you're
of
doing is
P3
defining away gain-of-function.
No.
You're simply saying it doesn't exist because you changed the definition on the NIH website. This is terrible, and you're completely trying to escape the idea that we should do something about trying to prevent a pandemic from leaking from a lab. There's the preponderance of evidence now points towards this coming from the lab, and what you've done is change the definition on your website to try to cover your ass, basically. That's what you've done. You've changed the website to try to have a new definition that doesn't include the risky research that's going on. Until you admit that it's risky, we're not going to get anywhere. You have to admit that this research was risky. The NIH has now rebuked them. Your own agency has rebuked them. But the thing is you're still unwilling to admit that they gained in function when they say they became sicker. They gained in lethality. It's a new virus. That's not gain of function?
According to the definition that is currently operable, Senator, let's make it clear for the people who are listening. The current definition was done over a 2 to 3 year period by outside bodies, including the NSABB, 2 conferences by the National Academy of Science, Engineering, and Medicine on December 2014, March 2016. We commissioned external risk-benefit assessment, and then on January of 2017, the Office of Science and Technology Policy of the White House issued the current policy.
And coincidentally,
I have not
the
changed
definition
any
appeared
definition.
on the same day the NIH said that yes, there was a gain of function in Wuhan. The same day the definition appeared, the new definition, to try to define away what's going on in Wuhan. Until you accept it, until you accept responsibility, we're not going to get anywhere close to trying to prevent another lab leak of this dangerous sort of experiment. You won't admit that it's dangerous, and for that lack of judgment, I think it's time that you resign.
Thank you, Senator Paul, and I would like to give the time to Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, well, there were so many things that are egregious misrepresentation here, Madam Chair, that I don't think I'd be able to refute all of them, but just a couple of them for the listeners to hear for. You have said that I am unwilling to take any responsibility for the current pandemic. I have no responsibility for the current pandemic. The current pandemic, okay? Number 2, you said the overwhelming amount of evidence indicates that's a lab leak. I believe most card-carrying viral phylogenists and molecular virologists would disagree with you that is much more likely, even though we leave open all possibilities, it's much more likely that this was a natural occurrence. Third, you say we've
tested 80,000 animals and no animals have been found with COVID.
Senator Paul, the time is for
And
Dr. Fauci
third,
to respond.
you made a statement just a moment ago that's completely incorrect, where you say we continue to support research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You proved it in August of last year.
No, your statement says, quote, I wrote it down as you
His
were
hands are
writing.
shaking.
You continue to support research at the Wuhan Institute of Virology.
You were in committee a month ago and
Which
said
is
you still
completely-
trust the Chinese scientists and you still support the research over there. You said it a month ago in
Senator
committee.
Paul, I have allowed Dr. Fauci to respond. You've had your time. I'm going to give him.
He's going to
one
be
more minute.
dishonest. He ought to be challenged.
Senator Paul, we will allow Dr. Fauci to respond after you've given accusations like that. Dr. Fauci.
What do you think of this quivering mess?
Well, he's just going to lie, straight-faced lie. I mean, I didn't realize how ruthless he is, but it's pretty fucking ruthless.
Do you see how he's quivering, though? From looking at a TV directly and saying that if you deny Fauci, you're denying science. Do you remember that?
I do remember that.
Do you remember how pompous he usually is?
You got to be a real pompous asshole to say something like that.
He's not looking the same anymore.
I don't know. I mean, he's getting called out on it. I mean, this guy should be fucking locked up and, purposely to get soap, it should be thrown at him so everyone could just jam him up the ass. But
oh my God.
No, yeah, he needs to be locked up and just forgotten about. But yeah, I mean, he's just gonna talk shit. They're gonna change vocabulary. They're gonna lie and again.
So this actually encompasses almost everything we were talking about tonight.
A lot of it, yeah.
What about you, Mundane?
So yeah, I could see how either he was getting angry or he was getting very worried about being called out like that. Honestly, he kept a really straight face through it, but the rest of his body, he was fidgeting a lot.
He was quivering at times.
Yeah, and then so they brought up the whole thing about how the definition of like gain of function got changed on the NIH website.
Mm-hmm.
So I actually went and took a look at it and took a look at the definition that's currently on there, and it is currently the one that Rand Paul did say it was. But I took a little bit deeper look and looked at some of the source code, and right around the time that they were starting to say that this was gain of function is the same time that definition did change. Like there's actual dates on the source code showing that definition changed on such and such date at such and such time, and it almost lines up perfectly.
Yep. Yeah,
It's
so I
so
just
full
thought
of shit because we know people that work with we know people that work with virus pathogens, and they've all said that this is a lab-made virus. And I know somebody specifically who works in government that works with bioscience and pathogens and has said that this is a lab-made virus. So he's talking shit. He's completely talking shit.
Well, I think this was one of the first times they literally had him cornered. And the funny part of it is, if I were to show anybody, like obviously we had on the other screen where it's just our windows. When I was searching for this, I had to go to one of my other YouTube accounts and I had to look into my history to find where I found this video because I couldn't find it. The video wasn't coming up. I was looking up Rand Paul, Anthony Fauci, and I saw this video about 4 days ago because it didn't happen that long ago. It was within the last week. And I was trying to find it, and obviously YouTube results weren't coming up. And I literally had to go into the library, look it up, and then search up the term, "You killed millions of Americans." Without looking up that term, this wouldn't come up. I was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling, couldn't find it.
Not just Americans, it's people all over the world. Like let's be real. Like let's just not single out Americans. He killed millions of people.
No. What I'm saying is this is the search term I needed to find this video.
No. I get that.
And this is widely like this should be easy to find, right? Because this is the literal congressional coverage.
Right.
Or Senate coverage, whatever you're going to call it. This is the official coverage. And this is what I've started doing, right? Just like the Arizona audits, the 2020 election, Arizona audits, all of the mainstream media was picking on one point of that. And we'll cover that in another episode. But all I'm going to say is I could not find. There was one source where I could find the real, actual congressional hearing and watched it. And I did the same thing with the Kyle Rittenhouse trial. I did the same thing here. I said I have to find the actual tape where I can make up my own mind instead of somebody else telling me what happened. And I don't think anybody's doing that anymore at all. I think the more we have access to information, the less we're actually utilizing it as a population.
I just went on YouTube and searched it to see if I could find it, and it's not popping up. It's buried.
Right. Now, if you search the term, "You killed millions of Americans" or "You killed millions of people," then it will come up because that's literally, I guess, the line that became famous from this. Rand Paul really, it's obvious he's going for the guy's throat. Maybe Rand Paul wasn't in on this whole thing because, I mean, for anybody who knows me, I don't have any faith in almost anyone in the government. So I don't know much about Rand Paul. Maybe if we looked up his name with Epstein, he'd come up too. But in this specific case, maybe the people behind the scenes who pull the strings have no use for this guy anymore. Fauci, maybe he's expiring. There's no point in him. Maybe they're about to start coming down on him and he knows it.
Well, I also think that the general population of people, it's even become, it was a hashtag at some point, like lock up Fauci, or it was arrest Fauci. So I think people are starting to finally catch on about this shit. So of course now they're going to take action against them, because someone's got to be the hero, someone's got to be the savior, right? So they're all jumping in.
Well, how many times did this guy alone just flip-flop on his statements? He flip-flopped on his statements easily dozens of times.
And I mean, some people have tried to defend him because it's like, how can you trust this guy? First he tells you not to wear a mask, and then he's all about it. Oh yeah, wear a mask because that'll keep you alive. And people are like, oh well, they had to keep masks for no. Like, you can't, health can't be politicized like that. Like, it's either wear a mask or don't fucking wear a mask. Don't flip flop on that because masks were in shortage. Teach people how to make a homemade mask or what to do in the time of shortage. But don't fucking lie about it. So I mean, this guy, right? He's a flip flopping asshole. So.
Well, remember when he lied about the masks even, and he admitted that he lied about the masks so that they can keep as many as they can for, people who worked in medical. And look, that made sense, right? It makes sense to do that. But then on top of that, they basically kept all the N95s for themselves anyways, because the public, even when they did start wearing masks, started wearing underwear on their face or any fabric they can grab. And that doesn't do anything. That just covers your face.
Even the N95s, people were wearing them wrong. Like, in order for them to be actually useful, they have to be like plastered to your face. There can't be any gap.
Mm-hmm.
So nobody was wearing them.
Yeah, or have your nose sticking out. Some people were wearing like pantyhose. You could see through it.
That's my favorite. The people who wear a mask, but the mask isn't covering their nose. It's around their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
So I think with that, how'd you feel about tonight? How'd you feel to be back?
Oh, it feels good to be back. I can't wait for the next one. It's not going to be 6 months away, right?
No, definitely not. No. The setup is working pretty good. The new office
really
is set up.
Butter, that new Mac's running smooth.
I didn't even bring up just the Mac. I mean, that's just one part of the whole thing. But, new studio. I moved, so I'm living in a different place. I was just working a lot, and a lot of change, a lot of fast change. Of course, I was mentioning the school system earlier because I'm dealing with that. There's just a lot of stuff going on. And as I mentioned earlier, even in my area, there were very light COVID restrictions for a small portion of time. But as the feds start making rules and as they're trying to force things, I don't want to get into a full-blown discussion on how that's coming down the pipeline because that's a little out there as well. But as well as illegal, like that current whole job mandate. I'm not going to use the term vaccination. Job mandate poke is really up in the air. But again, dealing with a lot of things. We have a setup now. Chris has a new desk as well, right next to his drum set. I think it looks beautiful. Mundane is back. So he's gone through a whole gigantic move and a whole new reset. He's getting internet by some kind of line coming through the ground. I don't know where he got it from. Are you glad to be streaming again, man?
Yeah, it felt good being able to hop on and actually do something and not have like no internet power. That cable I found while I was digging in the yard works great.
So where can people find you if they're looking for you, man?
So if they're looking for me on Facebook, it's Mundane Marauder. YouTube, it's Mundane Marauder. There's not much on the YouTube at the moment. Twitch is Mundane Marauder. Anywhere you can think of, it's Mundane Marauder.
Okay, so just look for Mundane Marauder. Is that on Pornhub as well?
Of course.
Got you. And yeah, before we say goodbye, anyone who wants to join the conversation, we do have a Discord. We've been responding, reading articles, posting new stuff on a regular basis. You could find the Discord just by going to the website, CamarillaCafe.com. Yeah, we are now on Instagram, even though we still have to start posting, but we're on Instagram, we're on Twitter, we have the website, and yeah, we should be back very soon. As quick as next week, which I'm hoping. I think we have plenty to talk about. I think you guys can agree on that coming up very soon. Any last words, guys?
Oh, just keep asking questions.
Yes.
Trust no one. Question everything.
Yep. Trust nothing. Question everything. That's nothing. Actually on my website, and you're doing it to me.
Yeah, I am. If you really want me to start talking about the website, though, I have some notes.
Oh, no.
First off, this is just the only one I'm going to give you right now. Main screen, as soon as you log into the website, it says, "Welcome to community." Did
Correct.
you mean for that?
Come down to Discord, where there's a community, and there's people in the chats. We've all been talking. It's a community.
I was thinking more like, welcome to the community.
But over that, it says, trust nothing, question everything. And with that,
I questioned it.
I want to thank everybody who came back after about 7 months, and to the people who are going to be listening on. We're on Spotify, we are on podcasts, we are on Google Podcasts, we are on every single thing. And I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. Thank you, Mundane. Thank you, Chris, as usual. And guess I'll see all you guys next week.
See you next week. Thank you, brother.
Have a good night.